This podcast is brought to you by HEC Paris.
My name is Hamid Senni, and I'm here to talk about diversity, performance, and leadership. And all afternoon, people have been talking about diversity, and I'm sure you've been mentioning the word performance and leadership. And today, that is becoming quite high in the agenda within major organizations. First thing first, so who I am as a person, so you had a brief description. So I've set up Vision Enabler about 5 years ago as a consulting firm to provide diversity services to global organizations. And I remember when I've set up the organization, a lot of people said, it would never work. And I was like, hold on. We're living in a global economy with a financial system that is international, and you're telling me diversity will not work? Come on. Everybody tries to sell their product to a global base, but those products are going to be designed by a very small minority who are quite elite, never going to work. So of course we need diversity policy, and that was my vision about 6 years ago. And today I'm teaching at Sciences Po, so the topic has become very important, and they believe that to be taught to HR students makes sense. And I was very pleased when I was invited to HEC for today, and to see that the entire week is about leadership, and today was dedicated to diversity. And of course, diversity, leadership goes hand in hand. So the past, how did I manage to start thinking about diversity? And of course, it all starts on the personal journey. And we all have our own personal journey. And if you look at the statistic of the MBA, about 83% of the students are international. So you're coming from different countries and regions, North America, Latin America, Asia, hopefully Africa, from all around the world. So you're already diverse within this room. So my personal journey is, so the book was properly translated, but if you go like straight to the point, it's almost if you say from a French ghetto to a financial ghetto. And you're not supposed to do that when you're born in France, the land of human rights. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. So I'm French, but I have Moroccan roots. And those Moroccan roots were in front of me all my life. And so I've got many degrees and everything, because in France you have a very strong welfare system and you have a strong Republican school. So if you're doing good at school, you can go very, very far. So when came time for me to find a job, the entire class could just land a job like this, but me. So I packed, went to Sweden, studied in Gothenburg, had my MBA, then went to Oxford, worked there, then went back to Sweden, worked for Ericsson, and then came 9/11. Lost my job, everything was gloomy and everything, and I was like, okay, maybe time to go back to France. So I looked for a job for 3 months from 9 to 5, and the only job I've landed was to sell vacuum cleaners door to door in Montpellier, the south of France, and they said after 6 months we'll reevaluate you. So I've turned down the job, and 3 months later I was working for BP in the heart of the city. And I remember when I went to Ericsson, I was like, wow, there are ladies everywhere. They're not just PAs, they are management position and everything. But in France, it's not the case. Why? And then I went to London, in the city, and then there was a more diverse population, and I'm talking about colors that were just not white. And I was like, but in France, it's a snow-white world. And that's how I started to think about diversity. So at that time, it was more like ethnicity and gender. But then I was like, but when you're in France, you're from Paris or from outside Paris. And then I was like, also, there's also the social status. You're from a poor background, middle-class background, elitist background. And I was like, wow. And how about religion? And how about sexual orientation? And how about age? Because in France, you're too young, too old. And I was like, okay, diversity goes beyond just gender and race. So that's how things started to start in my mind and to make sense. And then the vision I had for the future was like, okay, in a global economy, diversity, performance, and leadership. And if any organization doesn't embrace those three words, no future. They might still exist, but their competitor will just buy them out. And I remember saying this to someone at Bercy, which is our Ministry for Economy and everything. And he said, what do you mean? I said, one day there will be a company from a third world country who will buy a CAC 40 company. And he said, come on, get out. I wasted my time. And I was very lucky because 3 weeks later, Mittal bought Arcelor. So good. So my vision was, but how many CAC 40 companies you have in France? 40. But most people are working for SMEs. And if you look at major organizations, they're struggling with diversity. And how about all those SMEs? And one of my visions was like maybe the tools that are developed by those big organizations can be translated to those small organizations, like for total quality management. Big organizations said, okay, if we put a product together with pieces that come from small and medium organizations, if the quality is not right, so the end product won't be right. So they've pushed for quality. And one of my visions was maybe those big organizations will be pushing for diversity. And there are a lot of discrimination cases where actually a subsidiary did something wrong for a major organization, but then in the newspaper, they didn't mention the subsidiary, they mentioned the big brand. So there is a risk there to be addressed. And I was thinking with the presidential election next year, I think diversity will get there. Through a dirty debate, but we're going to get there. But how do you translate this within an organization? So what we've done is we developed a framework. It's our framework. This is not the framework. There are plenty of frameworks. And this example is all about human resources. But of course, the way we've developed one for human resources, you can have one for leadership, you can have one for communication, for legal, for cultural, for everything within your own organization. So let's talk about human resources, about HR. Yeah, good. So as I said, throughout my personal journey, I realized that diversity was something that was going beyond gender and ethnicity. So you have disability, you have gender. Here it's ethnicity and origin. This one is about this one is about nationality. So being French or being American or Indian. This one is about degree and social status. This one is about age. This one is about physical characteristic and health, sexual orientation, and religion. But everybody within organization is talking about capabilities. We want the best. Yeah. But when the person arrives for the interview, at the end of the day, it's a person. And we're full of bias. So the person arrives and we're like, oh, the person has a disability order, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work. We have to adapt their working environment. And then after 2 years, they're going to ask for promotion. Then we have to readapt. Oh. And also, we're going to struggle, because we can't take that person for lunch. We can't go out for dinner. We're not recruiting that person. Yeah, maybe that person is the best talent you have for the job. Yeah, but he has a disability, so we don't want him or her. And then you have ethnic, and then ethnicity. And then people are like, the same, we're full of bias. Well, I don't know, I don't understand those people. They talk with their hands, and they shout, and everything. And they're complicated, and we don't share the same values. Okay, out. No, I thought you wanted to attract the best talent. Here's a talent. It's not white, but no, okay, out. Nationality. There are some nationalities that are sexy and other nationalities that, I don't know, they speak with a strange accent. And it's not that sexy. But the starting point is we want the best talent. But it's not happening at the end of the day. The same for degree and social status. We're not from the same school, we don't share the same values, we won't understand each other, so maybe you won't fit in this organization. Age, too young, maybe you need more internship, or too old, you might be too expensive, not flexible enough, so out. And then you carry on, you're fat, you're small, you're tall, you're ugly, you don't have a fancy face, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking about capabilities, and what are you? Full of bias. And then we carry on sexual orientation. Oh, no, we're very, very industrialized. It's a very strong macho environment. Sexual orientation won't fit. At the end of the day, it's private, but out. And then religion, depending on where you are. For example, in France, when we talk about religion, at the end of the day, depending on the country, you're talking about Islam. And then you're like, yeah, but imagine, right now she's fine, but tomorrow I give her a CDI, a lifetime employment contract, and come back with a veil. I'm taking no risk. Okay, but as people within the HR department, you say you want the best talent, but when the best talent knocks at the door, you can't help it. You look at that. So I've talked about everything but this one, gender. Because at the end of the day, you end up recruiting Barbie and Ken. But the problem for Barbie, she might go on maternity leave, and you don't take any risk. So even Barbie is there. She's struggling to find a job. So who is left? Ken. And Ken is 32 years old, below 45. So he has space to work within your organization for 13 years. In a very, very competing environment, with such a mentality within your HR department, you won't last. And I remember, just before setting up my company, I read this article about Jacques Chirac, who said, I can't understand why France cannot produce a Google. I have an answer. Google, they were two kids. Okay, they were from Stanford, but at the end of the day, they were quite young. They were writing a PhD in France. A PhD translate in the company? No way. And then two PhD students get $1 million to start a company? No way. And then when the company is kind of doing all right, they get an extra $25 million to expand? No way. And how old are they? And by the way, among them, there is a Russian immigrant child? No way. That's why France doesn't produce any Google. Because we're full of bias. And we can't help it. So we're talking about attracting talent, promoting, and everything, which is all about the HR process. So a way to improve your environment is you look at your processes. How do you attract talent? How do you recruit? How do you compensate and provide benefits? How do you provide your learning and development? What is your career management and the mobility you offer within the organization? And any disciplinary procedures. And it's kind of amazing. When you talk to companies, those processes, most of the time, they're not written. People have them in their mind. They've been doing the job for years. And then when you say, how did you select people? They say, gut feelings. Yeah, gut feelings takes you there at the end of the day. So if you look at your processes, and if you make sure that your process reacts the right way, regardless of the person, then maybe you stand a chance to attract, recruit, compensate, and all of that, the best talent. And what I found amazing, if you look at this matrix, that one is supposed to be the easiest to start with. And yet, that's not the case. Because a lot of organizations are struggling to attract women. And then when they recruit them, after a couple of years, they realize they lose them. They see that their recruitment is 50-50. Why within 5 years, 30% of those girls are gone? But they realize that actually the mobility and career management is not fair because we're full of bias about maternity leave. And then if you look at the benefits and the compensation, at least in France, women are 24% behind men for the same job. In Sweden and the UK, it's 17%. And even Sweden, where they have quite an amazing balance, it's 17%. So when we're talking about this one, where you can measure, and normally you're not going to get a lot of emotional reaction within your organization, you're struggling. So imagine if you start doing things in other categories. And that's why companies, for the moment, they're thinking, let's try to change things within the gender, and then we'll see for the others. So when we're working on certain business case, we're thinking, yeah, of course we do that. Yes, in theory. But diversity is all about emotion. So for example, I gave an example earlier. I've said to my group, many organizations, they look at the top and they say, for example, we have only 17% of women. So even if this year we promote 100% women, we will move from 17 to 23%. So even in the next 5 years, we promote only women, we will still be behind. Yes, but you have a lot of guys who were in the pipeline to be promoted. So what you're going to say? Sorry, guys. Ken, we have to let pass Barbie. So you're going to have a lot of guys who are going to resign. And if you have a lot of guys who are getting a 1.5% increase, which is below inflation, and you say, but this year we're giving 20% to all women so they can catch up. They're not going to like it. They're going to think, yeah, maybe it's because we're not getting our pay rises that we can catch up with the ladies. So how do you manage as an organization? Because you have a lot of men who are going to resign. And if they don't resign, there will be a lot of bitterness. And if there is a lot of bitterness, you will have a negative impact on your culture and on the atmosphere, on the retention rate, on everything. So when you design an action plan, yeah, obvious, you do this. But when you take this action plan to the executive room, especially when it's about men, all can. They're all like 56 and beyond. Those are the challenges for today. Thank you very much.
Please visit us at www.hec.edu.